Is she with you?
I thought she was with you.
Wait, you thought she was with me. I can't help but notice you didn't try to lure her into a murder box and stab her to death. Maybe it would help if I dressed like this.
I mean, it wouldn't hurt.
You are never meeting my cousin. You got that right, Geralt. Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation. The new DC Multiverse Batman v Superman Wonder Woman is McFarlane Toys' third attempt at a standard Gal Gadot Diana. The question is the third time the charm, or the third strike? And don't worry, I'm also going to be showing off some Wonder Woman head swaps. Starting with the packaging, and we have that Batman v Superman style window box I like. Clean, simple, consistent names and logos down here, but the spine is colorful and movie specific, and has that cool branding. And we all know how much Ben Affleck's Batman likes branding. For those hoping to find their Wonder Woman in store, here's the UPC. And then flipping around back, we got a wonderful image of the gorgeous Gal Gadot as Diana. As I said last time, I'm really happy they're going with publicity stills instead of cartoon-style artwork, though we will be referring back to this picture for certain aspects of the costume later in the video. Also, if you're wondering, no, my camera's not out of focus, this picture's just blurry. For packaging, I'm giving Wonder Woman 5 points. Moving on to presentation, and Diana stands at 7 1/4 inches, or 18.5 centimeters, and is mostly the Shazam Fury of the Gods Wonder Woman, which itself is just 1984 with new and improved legs. The only new sculpting is her face. Lining them up, and the improvement over the years is undeniable. In McFarlane's defense, this was when they first started out back in 2020. Well, just starting out with DC Multiverse anyway. McFarlane's obviously been around a while, and if you're just looking at the eyes, I can see it. At the time, I defended Fury of the Gods, the head sculpt, not the movie, even citing this side-by-side comparison. Hands down, though, this is the best of the bunch. Turning her sideways, you can really see it in the profile. The paint job is really good, and it's so nice to finally see her hair being dark enough. Gal Gadot seems to have one of those faces that's hard to translate into plastic, but I don't think you're gonna get much better than this. Beyond that, all the reuse means you're getting both the good and the bad. In general, all the sculpted lines and detail of the armor are well done, but that diaphragm joint looks like she's been sawed in half. The metallic paint on the armor is a nice touch. I do think it would look even more authentic though if it was dirtied up a bit, and that brings us to the biggest missed opportunity, not giving her harness. Even Mattel did that. This one is so loose and bulky I thought about putting it on the new Diana. Unfortunately, it's actually incomplete and glued down, so I can't do that without destroying it, but I'm seriously tempted to track down a couple of extras and give it a shot. Beyond that, I'm glad they went with the more muscular legs of the Fury of the Gods version. We've definitely come a long way since 2020. Well, in terms of sculpt anyway. Looking at the new figure's boots, they're shiny and metallic, but they're also just solid red and gold. Referring back to the 1984 figure, and McFarlane went in to paint all the straps and the flesh tone peeking underneath. Same with the knees. Now it's just a lazy, solid gold. They were unfortunately also that way on Fury of the Gods. It's frustrating because in some ways they've gotten a lot better, in other ways there's still room for improvement, and in other ways they've gone backwards. Phenomenal head sculpt, but that diaphragm joint, lack of paint apps, and also lack of harness knocks her down a couple of pegs. So for presentation, I'm giving Wonder Woman an okay 3 points. Moving on to Poseability, and while we have looked at the articulation of this figure before, it's been a minute. From the top, and Diana's head is on a dumbbell joint, but due to the hair she's not going to get really any up. She can look pretty far down though. No tilt either because of the hair hanging over her shoulders, but she can look side to side. Moving on down, and Diana can raise her arms 90 degrees. She also gets forward and back thanks to the rotator cuff, which is nicely hidden by the hair, and of course complete rotation. Working our way down Wonder Woman's arm, and no problem with the bicep swivel. Perfect bend on those double jointed elbows, and of course wrist balls that can swivel and hinge either up and down or side to side, which will come in handy for Wonder Woman's sword. Shifting to the torso, and I've already talked about this diaphragm joint and dumbbell waist, she can arch back this far, which is really good. Here she is standing straight, and while not wonderful, Wonder Woman does have a pretty decent hunch forward for a DC Multiverse. Her side to side tilt's pretty good though, as well as swivel for swashbuckling. Below the battle skirt, and Wonder Woman has the typical McFarlane hips, by which I mean this swivelly peg detent system. Pretty decent swivel, but of course nothing would ever compare to a thigh cut. She can, however, however, kick this high and split this wide, which given the skirt's pretty good. Speaking of pretty good, that brings us to the double knee bend. Would probably be deeper if it wasn't for those straps rubbing against each other. And then moving all the way down, Diana has toticulation and old style ankle balls that can swivel, hinge, and like Wonder Woman coming out of decades of hiding at the first sign of a monster, pivot. As always, I am going to grade her on a curve because of the longer hair, and that better than usual hunch forward really helps. For poseability, I'm giving Wonder Woman 4 points. Moving on to playability, and there are a couple of new accessories which are very much appreciated. First things first though, and of course she has a trading card and a figure stand. Flipping that around, it's just a synopsis of the film. Once again, and this Wonder Woman comes with the lariat of Hestia. It's a nice shiny gold and hangs like so. The more exciting additions are her sword and shield. As usual, the blade's a little softer than I'd like, so I do worry long term about warpage. Still, I can't help but admire the sculpted detail and its sheen. Very bright blue hilt with some gold accents. As for the shield, I'm a little bit conflicted. Overall, it's been sculpted well. All sorts of wonderful runes hidden in there. But for one thing, it's just so incredibly clean. It's also really bent out of shape. I'm sure if I hit it with some heat, it'll be fine. Leastways, I hope so. Still, as I often say, I shouldn't have to. I like the sculpting of the straps, even though it should probably be painted differently. I'll also warn that it's very loose and floppy. With a little work, you can get her hand around it, but even that's not exactly what I'd call snug. That's because the straps weren't made for this Wonder Woman. They're actually reused from the one designed by Todd McFarlane. On that note, I can't say she has the tightest grip on the sword either. Don't get me wrong, you can absolutely display Diana with these items, just don't expect kids to be able to play with it. But playability is more than just accessories, it's also about how well your figure plays with others. Starting with a duo of Dawn of Justice Dark Knights, and here we have regular and nightmare versions of Batman, as well as the armored version. Next up, and here we have red and blue and black costume versions of Superman, as well as Justice League and Lost Kingdom versions of Aquaman. And then for a couple of villains, here's Ezra Miller and Shazam for those who appreciated her Fury of the Gods cameo. Now all we need is for Todd to give us this version. Come on! I double dog dare you. Here we have Snyder Cut and comic style versions of Cyborg, segueing us perfectly to comic style versions of Superman. Here's Action Comics 1000 and Hush, along with DC Classic and Crisis on Infinite Earths. From Man of Steel to Cape Crusader, and here's 3 Jokers and Rebirth versions of Batman, along with Hush and Nightfall. As for the Flash, and here's Rebirth and Flashpoint, along with Endless Winter and JLA versions of Aquaman, and Endless Winter Jon Stewart with Silver Age Hal Jordan. For a relative scale comparison, here's Wonder Woman with Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man, and as always, here she is with Stealth Iron Man.
Hey, you want to wrap me up in that fancy gold rope of yours?
I don't need a lasso of truth to know what you're thinking. Of course, I know you've all been patiently waiting for the head swaps, but I do have one note. Given that the bodies are the same, I'm not going to be swapping these. First, we have Last Night on Earth. Not the most realistic proportions for Gal Gadot, but this is very dynamic, and as usual, the cape forces it forward and down. Still, if you like it, here you go. As usual, this head's a great start for a comic version. The skin tones actually aren't that bad of a match this time around. Maybe just hit it with a matte finish to reduce that sheen. To turn her into a Rebirth Wonder Woman, all you really need is a head of hair. Next is Dark Knight's Death Metal. If you're willing to find a longer peg, there could be something to it.
Hi, I'm Diana of Themyscira.
For context, and here's what that looks like just sitting at normal height. As I usually say, this head's a fun start if you don't mind that larger crown. Though in this situation, you're probably going to want to shorten the neck. I'll also say I've seen people use this head for Mira more than Wonder Woman, and I think it actually works better that way. Moving on, and here's the one designed by Todd McFarlane himself. Obviously, the whole thing needs a complete repaint, but if you're interested, here you go. For what it's worth, I do think the proportions at least work. Other way around, and I love this face sculpt and headdress. It's not exactly comics accurate to a regular Wonder Woman, but I do like it. If you do too, just note that the face is a bit lighter. Here we have Endless Winter. Full disclosure, I'm just holding this in place instead of pinning it down, because once again, the pins really aren't compatible. That said, with a little bit of painting, this would be a really fun winter look for a live-action Wonder Woman. As for the inverse, it works a lot better than expected. True, the headdress and ponytail are different from comic-style Diana, but I really like the face, and the skin tones are a really good match. Lastly, and here we have the classic style style McFarlane Collector Edition. Similar to Last Night on Earth, I don't think the body's proportions really match Gal Gadot's, and for that matter, neither does the skin tone. The issue is that the Collector Edition was cast in this waxier plastic, so even if you painted it, it would still be kind of difficult to match. Other way around, and you could make this work a lot easier. All you have to do is paint the face. My guess is that this is the definitive DC Multiverse Gal Gadot Diana that we're getting, and while I like the new accessories, I really wish they weren't quite so loose. For playability, I'm giving Wonder Woman 4 points. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. At $22.99, this figure isn't a bad deal, but with so much reuse, it does feel like they could have done a bit more. Things like more paint apps for the boots, or again, her harness. I suppose they could always re-release her as a Wonder Woman 2016 edition with those things, but I do feel like that's kind of pushing it. For price, I'm giving Wonder Woman 4 points, averaging out to a still good total of 4 out of 5. For more Wonder Woman videos, check out one of these, and until next time, play nice and have fun.